On to the final presentation from International SOS. I'm sad to report that Dr. Nikki has been taken ill this morning, or yesterday, and so there was a bit of a panic on, but they have pulled another remarkable doctor, Dr. Philippe Guibert, out of the ops centre, and so I will allow him to come up to the stage and present International SOS. Thank you very much, Philippe.
You are very kind, really, because, accepting a French doctor before such a prestigious audience of security consultants, it's quite something for me. So I'll try to make it happen. How many of you do know of International SOS? A show of hands. Great. So we may not have to skip lunch before, otherwise it would have taken too much time to take you through who are we and what are we doing. So I have the pleasure to take you through what SOS, International SOS, is doing in terms of security and crisis management. Particularly, you may know of us as an assistance company. This is where we started 40 years ago. But actually, we'll probably be doing much more. And, with, as you said, Nick, the vast array of expertise that we have, not only in terms of security, but also of the medical, we are also able to help organizations address many risks they face globally. So a few numbers to start with. Obviously, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So, it's been a long journey so far. Started in Asia, built and created the first assistance center in Singapore, still active 40 years ago, and moved across the world to build a fantastic network of presence. We are, we have a footprint in 90 countries in the world. What does it mean? It means that we have presence in terms of health and security professionals that are servicing our clients, are running our clinics in places where those challenges happen, given the environment, business or economic situation, or the natural disasters conditions. So our presence on the ground is definitely a mark that makes us legitimate to support organizations that are experiencing the same situations wherever they are doing business in these countries or sending travelers or expatriates in these countries. To do this, oh yeah, I didn't see there's a fantastic animation. To do this, quite a few of our colleagues are in these organizations. I'm one of the 1,000 doctor among 1,400 physicians that works full-time across the organization, and Sam in this room is one of the hundreds of security specialists that do work full-time as well for International SOS. So that means that we have a presence, we have legitimacy, and we have the sort of capacity to support our clients, and you'll see that mostly on advisory and prevention services, but also when things happen and supporting them at time of crisis. We are dealing with a large bunch of clients that trust us globally, and as you see, quite a number of large organizations. But what is important for you to understand that we are very much as well in prevention. We're here to support organizations and particularly members, travelers, whomever they are, anticipate and have access to the right information before things happen. And out of the 3.5 million calls that we take every year, 70% of them are related to information, just access to specialists that would advise these people calling us prior to a trouble, during an event, after something has happened, any sort of information that they may want to have access to, either speaking to a physician, a nurse, or security specialist. And it's exactly the core and the value of what we bring as leaders in health and security risk management to make sure that whomever has been sent overseas or works overseas or as an expatriate, but also as a national employee, has access to the right information to manage their own health and security environment and adopt the right behaviors. So that gives us some form of legitimacy as well to understand what it means to anticipate and manage crises. And as we support organizations put in place plans and programs to manage crisis, I think that's we've noticed that what is important for organizations to consider is definitely to build plans across scenarios, whichever they can be, related to the business, the environment, the nature of the activities organizations are working in. And we do it together from a security and health perspective. When you think of the reality of the world today, and I won't digress too much on the evolution of climate and its consequences in terms of health and safety of people, and including employees, we may well understand that organizations are confronted more and more to new threats or challenges or extreme events that were not predicted, or the black swan events that were not anticipated in a particular location, that they need to be prepared for. That means that scenarios have to be built, have to be created, including the worst case ones, and would have guessed that half of California would have been burnt in a few days because of the wildfires. I mean, something new is happening, and we need to work on this plan. So our role, and I guess that's the role of consultants that you are as well, is to help organizations develop these scenarios, have a right understanding of what is likely to impact the organization in terms of individuals, in terms of assets, in terms of supply chain or business activities, and define well in advance what would be the triggers that would be used at the time of a crisis to at least anticipate as much as possible the evolution of an event, so that the right decisions are taken ahead of time as much as possible, but in a prepared fashion, so that no one's been caught by surprise. And I guess that's our role as consultants to support this through a continuous monitoring, obviously, because nothing's casted in stone. It's all fluid, and having access to information and constant monitoring, we'll see that in a minute, helps address these triggers at the right time, and then decide on the right time to organize evacuation or transfer of people. So this, I think, I'm glad this was mentioned by the previous speaker, the word or the concept of duty of care is something that we've participated to coin, close to 20 years ago, and that now is widely accepted as a norm. And duty of care really means that, that's the role of organization, and that's also our role to play to help organizations execute their responsibilities in terms of duty of care they have for their people, and to a larger extent to the stakeholders, because organizations are in charge of their employees, whomever they are, but they are employees at daytime, they are citizens at nighttime. So having an understanding of the responsibilities organizations have in terms of health, safety, security on their people and the communities they are interacting with is, I guess, part of the duty of care responsibility. So when it comes to managing crisis or anticipating crisis, these are the questions organizations have to consider ahead of time. Who needs to be taken care of? What about this dependents? What about the extended families? I would say, what about pets? Because we do repatriate pets sometimes, believe it or not, during crisis. During COVID, we had to repatriate or move families with pets. So it's a joke, but that's really understanding the perimeter of who needs to be taken care of, including leisure travelers. You all know the concept of leisure. Who's in charge of what? What is the trigger? What is the definition? Who's covered or not in the context of the environment? And including local nationals more and more. There's less and less distinction between expatriates, high-level CSP plus people that live and go in a country, and local nationals that may not live any further or leave their country because they are not allowed or there's nothing else around. So having a clear understanding of who needs to be taken care of, how and when, and what will be the level of support is something to be considered and anticipated, I guess. So let's build back on what we've learned from the previous crisis, and particularly the Middle East one, which is probably the most recent one, obviously. So a key themes to consider, and maybe questions to ask ourselves, or organizations to ask ourselves. So first of all, who in the organization is in charge to take this decision? It may be trivial, but we've seen so many organizations confronted with who is in charge, who is the decision maker, who takes not only has access to the purse to make people move or to take actions on investment that would be needed to repatriate people or to get some supplies to these individuals. So understanding who has the responsibility is probably a trivial point, but one of the most important ones. Knowing where these people are, as I was mentioned before during this presentation, having access to geolocalization of where employees are at the moment, and being able to assess whether or not they are impacted and affected by the event, whether they're fine and whether or not they need support is absolutely key. And these tools of geo-tracking or tracking travelers and employees are now part of the norm of organizations, part of their crisis management organization. And that's absolutely critical because our role, I guess, is to help organizations take the right decision, who's affected, how many are there, where are they, what can we do about it, based on previous plans and scenarios. So having access to these tools, probably key. Then, having anticipated as well where to take them to, and I guess that's part of the security plans that we are building for organizations, not only to say, if something happens, what would be the decisions to take within the country, but then considering where could you be moved out in the surrounding countries, where is the safest place of event that is accessible or is part of the option lists that we may consider at the time of a crisis. So this evacuation or relocation aspect has to be anticipated with the best routes and ways to do this. Knowing the plans, and maybe something you're exposed to as well, how many organizations have very nice plans, that completely, dusty, unused, or actually the plan is in the head of a few crisis management leaders, but the documents themselves aren't used, or the framework that is being defined by organizations is not applicable. So of course, we all know that plans never all defeat the first fight, for sure, but having the ability to plan ahead and to test the plan and to play with the various scenarios is the responsibility of organizations. We're supporting this as well, and we do it in an integrated fashion, health and security, because no crisis is ever either purely security or purely medical. You may be dealing with a natural disaster with having to evacuate to take care of people that are vulnerable, chronic diseases, pregnant women, and there's a health dimension into this security event. And the opposite is true as well. The security or medical situation in a country or in a place where there's civil unrest or security constraints as well. So this combined integrated dimension of security and health, and one of the representatives, means that the crisis team need to understand the perimeter of their responsibility, bring the right stakeholders at the time, and play with it ahead of time because there's no better plans are tested before events happen. Monitoring, I guess that's probably the easiest way because many organizations have access to monitoring services or support organizations that would give them access to the right information to then, based upon what's available, what is known, what is unknown, what is reliable as a source of information, may help them take the right decisions to move or to stand fast. And then again, in terms of evacuation, you're making sure that you're supported by the right organization when you take action to move people, making sure that this happens in the best and safest way. So, again, based on the back of this Middle East crisis, what have we collected as information in terms of the challenges that some of our clients did face or do face today in managing this crisis? There's probably three main categories. The first one is about plans and frameworks. It's about making sure that the structure to anticipate the crisis, to react to it, is in place, is tested, is valid, is known, and the right roles and responsibilities have been associated with taking the right actions. Again, it may sound obvious, but that's not the reality in many organizations. The second one is probably related to the logistics, in terms of organization, moving people, having access to information, putting in place the right support to move person from A to B, and access to the right routes, understand the complexity of crossing borders ahead of time. Part of this logistical aspect is important. And probably the third category is about people and businesses, making sure that employees and all the categories of people that you want to take care of, or organizations want to take care of, are aware of what needs to be done, are informed, have access to the right support and information, are prepared, and know how to behave in a way so that evacuation or transfer will be done in the most appropriate way. So probably these are the categories of the most important challenges that our organizations do face when it comes to dealing with these crises. So we, as International SOS, I believe, have some understanding how these should be put in place, and that's through our integrated intelligence organization. We have security centers in the world that cover the planet 24/7, and security presence as well in many of countries. We are able to collect information, first aid information, on the ground information. So not only validate what's available on the open sources, dark webs, literature or whatever news, but also on the ground with our people, our correspondents. So it gives us the ability to be extremely fast in collecting information and sharing information in due time with our client members. All of this integrated in these security centers, analyzed, validated, peer-reviewed, and within 20 minutes, I guess, if there's something serious, we are able to send an email alert and a notification to our client members for anything that happens in the world. So we are, I've been told, even faster than the BBC, and I know that the BBC is quite something for you, so yeah, we can be proud of it. Yeah? So that's something that is important, because we want decision makers within organizations to immediately have access to information they can take action on, either stand fast or activate a crisis committee or contact people on the ground, and with tracking solutions, contact individuals. This is what we know of the situation. How are you doing? How many of you are likely to be impacted? So immediately, with this dissemination access, give the opportunity of an organization to implement immediately the right measures, to the right people, the right plans, the right decisions being taken care when they have access to this information. But also having access to humans, because it's not only a question of information, which is great, websites, phones, but it's also calling specialists, either in country or through assistance center. Okay, you know us, your clients of International SOS, this is the situation, we understand, this is our business, this is our environment, please help us take action. We may need someone to be deployed on the ground, or we may need someone that talks directly to our employees or to the decision makers that are in country. And this is important because it's all about helping our organization deal with the potential resilience of employees. I mean, it's just one slide on the importance of mental health. You may have seen these numbers before, but all organizations do experience the same sort of pattern of employees suffering from mental health issues or mental health distress. Either it's stress, anxiety, depression, or even burnout sometimes. Why is that important? Because that's a reality anywhere in the world. It's not only limited to employees working in a corporate setting or environment. It happens as well to organizations and that have employees in less sophisticated places, where employees as well are suffering from mental health distress. And why is that important? Because the baseline level of resilience, if you face mental health issues, is impaired, actually. And the level of ability to react to crisis is challenged. So supporting organization raise mental health within organization is also, in a way, ability to raise the resilience of our organizations and employees collectively to deal with crisis. Because that's the reality of the world, And these are sort of back to 2021, sort of a type of crisis we've been involved to. And as you said, there's no limitation in the type of crisis or events we are supporting our organization. It could be a completely man-made disaster, completely natural disasters, and everything in between. And as I said before, now, all of these crises, you may picture these one by one and think, is it purely security or is it purely medical? And in reality, probably all of them are hybrid. The situations where employees that are affected by these events may need an integrated health and security support. And this may come in a different shape with, again, climate change. We may see more of these extreme weather events, these heat waves, these floods in the world. We've seen an increase of 80% of the email alerts that we send to our employees are related to climate-related events. Between 2022 and 2023, between 1 year, 80% increase in climate-related alerts that we are sending. We're just, obviously observing this evolution, and that's something that is important. In terms of crisis, I won't lecture you on crisis, of course. You know this better than I do. But what's important to picture this in the context of this Israel-Gaza crisis is, again, to help remind our organizations on the reality of planning and monitoring. The response can't be appropriate if there's no appropriate planning and monitoring. And it's about, of course, documentation, crisis management, anticipating either plans or the readiness or the training, and access to specific or bespoke sources of information related to a particular place or particular environment. Planning needs to focus on. But it's all about people. It's about employees. It's about making sure that whomever needs to be trained is trained. Whomever needs to be equipped with information, it could be PPEs as well, it could be first aid training, it could be whatever is appropriate to help our employees react and adopt the right behavior at a time of a crisis is done at the time of planning and monitoring. And even asking the question of who are the most likely exposed people, who are the key assets. Obviously, anyone is a key asset in a country or in an organization, but some are more essential than others. And these questions have to be asked before, and it's part of the planning, so that when the response starts, all these questions have been answered. So let me take you through a real case, obviously. That's again the Israel-Hamas conflict. On the left-hand side, you may recognize the timeline of events that did happen, but also back again on this structure, the planning and monitoring versus the incident response. You may understand that our role as International SOS has been really to not only ensure that we would have access to the best information, update, refresh, because that's something that was kind of anticipated, monitor more closely, build more connections with people that would, and resources that could help us get the right insight at the time of an event. And also inform our members, through the email alerts, the risk rating of the countries that have been escalated, so that our organization could prepare and anticipate, and in turn, brush up their plans, train their people, and equip them, as I said before. And in terms of incident response, obviously, that has been, a few days before, another alert been sent of a potential escalation, and obviously advisory the very day the attack took place. With the team sent on the ground 3 days later, and I think that's important. The only way for us to have access to first-hand information, to tell exactly what happens, and to support not only organizations where there are people on the ground, fetch individuals that would need to be gathered in anticipation of an evacuation, but also have access to real first-hand information on the ground, is systematically done by experts. So it's a combination of health and security experts. So yeah, that was the case, I think, for this one. 3 days later, where we had to send 2 security specialists and 1 healthcare professional. It happened to every one of us. We have all been involved in crisis management. 2004, you may remember the tsunami in Indonesia. I was sent there to part of this crisis team to immediately assess what could be the level of support we could offer to our clients, knowing that, unfortunately, there was a situation where the dead were dead and the living were living without any issues and any problems. So I guess that's important to have access to this first aid information and make sure that we can advise, we can push information, and we can support, and then facilitate the organizations of transfers in whichever appropriate location it could be, and evacuations of medical staff. So definitely the response is probably two main categories. Not only it's about supporting people that needs to be evacuated, those who are at risk, that are not necessary in the country, those who have, health or, conditions that can't stay in the country. So it's about, having access to the right information, intelligence, offering emotional support. There's no better time than someone needs to talk to psychologist, a coach, or a counselor to make sure that they are feeling supported. And that's something that is in place systematically for any sort of crisis. It's valid not only for employees but also for managers that probably are the most at risk, emotionally speaking, because they are in charge of themselves but also of their teams. So having access to this, organizing, if required, escorts, transfer teams on the ground to accommodate medical evacuations, giving access in terms of advice, and sourcing whatever is appropriate in terms of accommodation or re-accommodation. But it's also important for those who need to stay, probably even more at risk in the middle of a crisis. I would add to this list emotional support again, because it's probably even worse. When you're stranded in a place where you can't communicate easily, you can't control your environment, you're not in full control, you need to have access to emotional health and response. So all of this is part of the response. Just to finish, maybe some light of hope. It's been, this crisis management very well, but understanding as well that, in this context of situations, we are also helping our organizations deal with very complex and specific conditions here. That's a story of, again, in context of this Israel-Hamas crisis, where people still have a medical need, and that's the story of a boy that had a cancer, 10 years old, and that needed to be transferred for treatment. So first options were Cairo, couldn't work out. So the second one was Jordan. So can you imagine the level of complexity? And I may refer to my dear colleagues working in the assistance centers that are true physicians, emergency care physicians, that have to deal with these situations together with our security colleagues to make sure that not only approvals for movements would be obtained in due time, that the coordination of transfer between an ambulance with 2 support vehicles or security vehicles would make sure that the medical evacuation would be as safe as possible and as swift and fluid as possible. And crossing at a particular point between Israel and Jordan has been quite something, with a transfer from an ambulance to another. So the complexity of this can only be done if it has been anticipated, coordinated, with a clear communication between the teams on the ground, medical and security colleagues working in different assistance centers, and make sure that the coordination and the logistics between clients as well that are winning these in this case this child to be taken care of is in place. So this level of communication is extremely important. All of this, fortunately, is part of our ability to coordinate this crisis. We know how to do it. The challenge probably lies on the client side, how to make sure it happens. And the family, HR, risk managers, crisis management team approving, coordinating, and supporting us and allowing us to do it in the best way. And that's probably the best reward we can have, actually, because we are here, obviously, to support organizations, but at the end of the day, we are protecting lives. And whether or not it's security or medical or health or risk management, that's the objective, ultimately, to get these comments and have these happy faces of people that have been extracted from a crisis and have access to a new life and new opportunities. So with this optimistic end, you may know about us for those of you who don't know. And I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe. I'm curious as to your role as a Doctor. What's your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I'm I'm a doctor, for sure. But I'm not a treating physician. No, that's a good question. I'm a public health specialist by training, so my role is to drive and coordinate the health consulting activities at International SOS. So that means I run a team of consultants, physicians, non-physicians, that do support organizations on advising them on health issues, from crisis preparedness, obviously. I'll let you imagine how busy were we during COVID to advise, to support, and run programs as well, and to support in terms of information, preparedness, planning, and all the topics that are related to mental health, occupational health, global health issues, climate change, obviously. So we're busy, but it's nice.
I just snuck that one in first. Any questions for Philippe at the moment? No, I'm going to be quite selfish then, because we are, obviously we have finished now collectively a little bit earlier, and we will get a longer lunch, because obviously you want that, because it had to drag you back in after coffee. So my experience, and I'm speaking specifically from Sudan, and then not that I was in Afghanistan, but the sort of evacuation from. In Sudan, we had a warden scheme where we had a tiered approach. We could see things building, non-essential families would be taken away, but then it would be shelter in place, or it would be full evacuation, and getting hold of airframes to evacuate volumes and volumes of expats is difficult. How do you manage getting hold of the commercial aircraft to evacuate people?
That's a good question. Actually, we have a team, a dedicated team that keeps contacts with these chartered aircraft companies that do maintain constant availability of seats in either these planes or the planes themselves. And that's part of the anticipation as well. If something is about to happen, we make sure that we will have access to priority seats or planes themselves to organize chartered evacuations. Sometimes it's something coordinated with governments as well. And I may take the example of COVID, for instance, where we evacuated the European community in Wuhan with the European Union, actually, and the French government, where we chartered the 3 aircrafts that would fly away part of the community that was stranded in Wuhan back to Europe. So sometimes it's completely organized and managed by International SOS, but more and more we do see sort of coordination with the likes of FCDO or Ministries of Foreign Affairs that would coordinate evacuations of EU resortissants or whomever nationality they are, and ask International SOS to put in place capacity, and within the aircraft have the right teams, security, medical together, to take care of whoever needs to be taken care of. So that's a dedicated role of a team at International SOS.
So, I mean, you've mentioned Lebanon, Sibline mentioned Lebanon and the precursor, and seeing what was coming, and wargaming, exercising ideas, knowing that, an invasion by IDF was likely or possible. Yeah. But what about, and I don't know if you had experience from Afghanistan, as I mentioned, but the rapid rate that, the Taliban came back into Kabul took everybody by surprise. We were expecting weeks, but they were there within days and hours. I mean, how do you cope with that? I mean, that's such a fast-changing scenario that it must overtake you, surely.
Yeah, and I may not be able to answer to your questions because I was not directly involved. I know that, of course, we had few organizations, and we did work with the US government on the response. In this case, it was such a sudden thing that I'm not sure we've been heavily involved, because probably not much organizations were left in the country that we would need support from International SOS. However, our role is, in the context of this event, to take care of Afghanistans that have been brought back to the US or other countries, because they have health needs. Again, taking care of these asylums is important. So that's the deal. The organization we have. It was not about dealing in the moment, because the crisis was so sudden that there was probably not many people from our clients to take care of. However, now we're supporting the US government deal with the health of these poor citizens that are, entering the territory, and they need care, treatment, whatever medical support.
Yeah. Another round of applause, please, for Philippe and International SOS.